David.
And I'm your co-host, also David, David's dad.
All right, welcome everybody to an exciting episode of The Bull and the Cub as we continue with our series of having guests in the financial sector on, and this not specific to the financial sector, but it's something I was really excited about to have Kira Shishkin on. He's the founder and CEO of informed.now, fast-growing news platform that delivers unbiased, bite-sized news updates directly by text message. We'll get into the details of that, but certainly, when we learned about Kira and what he's doing with his organization, getting accurate news information, unbiased, not sensationalized, is something that's really critical to all of us who are trying to follow what's going on in the world, how that may impact the financial industry. So we're absolutely ecstatic to have him on. So let's get going. David, what's the first question?
What inspired you to create informed.now?
Thank you. That's a great question, David. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to join you, and I think we'll have a great conversation. What inspired me to start Inform.now is it's a mix of my observations on the market that it's become painstakingly difficult for people to, just get the basic facts around what's happening around them. But also, second reason is I would say my personal experience. I grew up between Ukraine and Israel, where the stakes for misinformation, as we're seeing now every day, have always been really high. And so seeing Ukraine, seeing Israel, and then coming to the US, the stakes of misinformation and misinformation overload have always been like a personal journey for me of dealing with it, seeing it, unfold throughout my whole life, always craving a source of information that is factual and doesn't seek to manipulate, mislead, or overwhelm you in any way. And so come to the US and, being part of the American dream journey that is still very much strong and alive today, I set out to build Inform.now as an infrastructure project to give everyday people the power of fact in their palm.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think the best companies always come from somebody who's has this personal passion to do something and to do good for society. So that's fantastic. So explain to our listeners, because we've signed up and to get the text messages. So, but explain to our listeners, how does it work?
Yeah. So we are technically a news research company, and we spend, hours on the day, every day, essentially 24 hours, monitoring what is going on around the world. Everything from economic shifts, political shifts, trade, traffic, healthcare, climate. And we are curating the things that change the world the most, right? So the question we ask every morning is, what changed the world in the last 24 hours? And we curate those news and send the most signal rich and noise low um, SMS text to our readers. And so our readers get a single text with a very, very concise briefing from our research every morning. And the entire experience is orchestrated through SMS. So there's no app, there's no website, there's no email that you have to manage or figure out. There's no passwords to remember. It is the entire relationship is run through SMS. And it's as easy to join as it is to leave.
That's perfect. I mean, it's, the two things that I think so many people want is just what are the facts, what's going on in the world, and they want it kind of regularly, just, in a daily dose. I want to know what's going on in the world. I'm busy with my normal life, but I want to know what's going on in the world. I don't want to have to deal with all this, filtering through all the noise. Just give me the facts and give it to me regularly. And I think that's just fantastic. Was there a moment when you realized, you talked about your background and seeing how misinformation can impact the world? Was there a moment where you kind of just realized, this traditional news system consumption has become broken?
Totally. I think two answers to that question. One is it's been a developing feeling, and one, there was certainly a certain moment. So I would say seeing the same episode of a show and you see it three times, you kind of get a little tired. Seeing it in Ukraine, seeing it in Israel, and then coming to the US and seeing it again for the third time, I was like, no, I've seen this too much. This is a pattern that I'd like to break for myself, but also if I can help others escape it. a very specific moment in time. There was a time I was in San Francisco, so and it's a couple of years ago, and there was an earthquake warning. Right, not uncommon for San Francisco, but it hasn't happened in a while. So people were a little bit spooked, and I was living on the coast, so there was also some rumor or some conversation around a tsunami warning, right, or like a large kind of flood warning from the earthquake. And anytime I would look that up, right, it was like, hey, is there going to be a tsunami? All the sources I've seen, right, top search of Google were all paywalled. I was like, wait a second. So I have to pay somebody just an annual subscription, it seems like, just to tell me if my house is going to be underwater in the next day. And then the sources that were free were so sensationalized and clickbaited that I would click on them. And just as I was getting, 300 viruses on my computer, I would realize that the headline that promised a certain level of insight, the article didn't have it. The article didn't have what the headline claimed it would. They had no information, no data, nothing that I could, grab onto. I realized, like, gosh, like, you can either, pay an arm and a leg to get very essential facts, which only the professional elite of our country can really like comfortably afford, or you read news that misinform you fundamentally, that are designed to advertise to you, that are designed to solicit you, rather than actually give you the facts. I think that was the specific moment where I was like, no way. Like, I don't want to be a passive observer of the collapse of media. I'd like to do something about it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, David. You got one lined up.
Um, how did your background in finance, investing, and venture capitalism influence your approach in building a news company?
Yeah, gosh, you mentioned, guys, that I'm not really a finance person as of today, but I was raised in finance, and I was an investment banker and a private equity guy and a VC guy before heading into this world. And so I think it's given me a lot of examples of at least what hard work looks like, because it's an industry that glorifies hard work in a way that I think is really important. I think it's shown me it gave me an instinct for polish. Like, what does something good, presentable, final look like? I would say alongside, it's an industry that demands or invites you or encourages you to be extremely informed all the time. You need to have a perspective on the market, whatever market you're operating in. And you cannot have a perspective on the market if you are not informed about the market or informed about, markets in general. And so I think it's almost been like a bubbling realization that this was a need that I've experienced, I've felt across my career, and something that I'd want to build around to make it easier for other people, or to make it accessible for more people. Because the truth is, high signal information services exist, right? They're just prohibitively expensive for everyday people. If you are somebody who's working at a large investment bank, you will have access to information services that are, $30,000 per person per year. You will have access to that, and they're great. But can most of us afford $30,000 a year information service subscriptions? We can't. And so that's where that impulse of like, wow, this power needs to be democratized. We want to give the power of facts to everybody. It's a civil right. It's a civil obligation, right? Apart from the world of finance, for every single person, especially in America, to be able to, command the facts of their life. And so, yeah, to your question, David, I think it's a mix of feeling the need firsthand and realizing the stakes, and seeing just how underserved or underbuilt that need was.
That's fantastic. What was it? I mean, it seems to me that it would be challenging to try to bring people, even though what you're offering is, authentic, factual information, getting people off of almost the drug of, getting their news from some of these clickbait sources. has got to be challenging to get people off of, a social media site where they're getting news from that's clearly something that people shouldn't get their news from. It's clearly just producing clickbait and sensationalism and telling them how to think. But was it challenging to get people to, kind of buy into, yeah, this is very just simple, basic news. This is something you should be leaning into. Is that a challenge?
I mean, I would say that what the traditional legacy news media has done really well is transition people from reading news, right, from 20 years ago, reading the morning paper, into reading news commentary that is
Right.
free, but isn't signal rich, right? It isn't fact rich. It isn't insight rich. It is full of, right, like conversation around news, discussion of news, commentary, opinion around news, but not the news itself, right? And I think when you ask everyday people, hey, do you read the news? What comes to their mind isn't news pure. It is the image of news commentary that they're exposed to in every bar they walk into, and there's an anchor on the TV screen, right? And get a lot of that in San Diego. Or if you are, any channel of TV, social media as well, anywhere on the internet, there's people discussing news. But that's not the same thing. And so I think our challenge has been not teaching people that what the difference, although that's been part of the journey, but finding the people that understand the difference and reaching them, right? And saying, hey, there's a growing minority of people who feel that what they're consuming is, not false necessarily information, but it is irrelevant to the news. Like it is noise. Are you familiar with the signal and the noise framework?
Right.
Yeah, right. They're consuming noise. They're consuming irrelevant, non-meaningful data that has no significance. And so speaking to that minority of people and finding them who are already looking for solutions like ours has been like our main endeavor, right? Is finding our own people. And alongside as well, converting people who are not realizing they're consuming noisy information into consuming more signal rich.
What are the dangers of making investment decisions based solely on social media?
Oh my goodness, David, don't get me started. It's there are no incentives whatsoever in the world of social media that are truth confirming or truth seeking or truth preserving or in any way concerned with truth or accuracy. When you look across the social media landscape, what people are optimizing for is what the algorithm and the platform incentivizes, which is virality. And very rarely are the most viral things the most truthful, right? It tends to be humor, it tends to be silliness, it tends to be, all forms of things that have nothing to do with accuracy of facts, right? Like I've never seen a fact go viral. And I've never seen a fact go viral on social media. And I can't say I've even seen many facts on social media. And so to me, it's an environment that promotes essentially the opposite of truthfulness, right? It promotes virality, clickbait, it promotes the hook, it provokes. And so in an environment that optimizes around those things, it's not the right place to look for factuality or for accuracy. So I would say, what are the risks? I mean, all of the above, right? It's nobody should be making any kind of decisions, especially if they're putting a stake against them, right? If they're betting on that based on the chatter and noise of social media, which inherently has no guardrails or accuracy whatsoever.
That's really a fantastic answer. I'll read real quick too, if you don't mind. Like I've got my informed.now news from today, and here's just one of them. There's a series of kind of bullet points on different topics of news that came out, and it's great. It's just the facts. Trump declares Iran ceasefire over after U.S. resumes strikes following attacks on three commercial vessels in Strait of Hormuz. Says negotiators will continue talks on final agreement. I mean, there's no sensationalizing, there's no spin, there's no pro one side, politics or it's just this is a fact that happened and everybody wants to know. This is a lot of people have a thirst for this to say, yeah, I want to know what the fact is of what's going on with, the war in Iran and peace talks. And there you go. In 10 seconds, you gave us a fact, and that's fantastic. And what I think a lot of people are driving for. But Dave, keep going with the fun. A lot of young people, want are looking to invest and are new investors. That's a lot of our listeners. So keep going with some questions on the, finances for young people.
Um, what financial mistakes would you see young adults make most often?
Hmm. Not starting early enough. I think, David, you're well ahead of everyone, ahead of all of us. But I think, this whole movement around giving folks access to the financial markets early, I think is a great one. I think it's a great direction to be moving into. Obviously, we've heard about the program from the government that is now enabling folks, the youngest of ages, to have a stake in the U.S. stock market. I think that's a smart move. I think it's very clever, both for the government and for everyday people. You don't have to go in big. You don't have to make big bets, but getting your feet wet early on, showing an interest, I think is clever. And I think it would be a mistake to delay that. Um, I would say don't do what your friends are doing, in a sense of don't just ride these waves of what is popular, of what is trending. There may be a thesis there, there may be a direction there, but you need to have your own opinion. Even if you're doing what it is that other people are also doing, like if you're following some sort of a trend, you still need to have your own opinion as to why you're doing it, what for. So I think, maybe two answers. One is start as early as you feel comfortable. And two is have your own independent thought process on everything that you're doing, right? It is a mistake to borrow other people's thinking. Even if you're buying into the same stock, if you're doing a lot of things that look similar to other people, you need to have your own thesis. And without your own thesis, you're flying, in the dark. And you don't ever want to do that in the stock market or any market for that matter.
Very cool. What advice would you give someone wanting to invest their first $10,000 and didn't really know what to do, like, and how to invest? If they should do like real estate, stocks, what?
Yeah. Well, I think my first advice to somebody who has $10,000 to place somewhere is don't place all of them, right? I think the stock market a lot is about restraint. And just because you have investable capital doesn't mean you should deploy it all at once, right? Save that 10,000 and say, okay, looking at the market, looking at where can I come in, and become ready to invest, but don't rush to drop that money in, right? Like start following the stocks, start trading on Investopedia where it's completely free. Even if you have the money, it doesn't mean you need to be risking it, right? So start being prepared to invest and wait for the right moment. Don't go all in with those funds. Say like, hey, I'm willing to take 1,000, 10% of the sum, and look at a certain sector that interests me. Right? Maybe it's technology, and follow some stocks and how they perform, how they react to different events over time. Because right, you being handed a $10,000 check and saying go invest it is sometimes maybe even against you know your your own best interest, right? It's about having that money, having the knowledge that you can invest it, but then waiting out and moving slowly. I think maybe another addition to the previous question is I wouldn't rush any decision, right? If you have a decision that you feel you're building confidence around, just give it even more time than you think, right? Give it time to build conviction. Um, when it's deciding between like different themes, I would say there is alpha, right? There is opportunity across all of them. It may look different, it may be differently shaped, but it's about your interest, right? If you don't care about real estate, investing in real estate is just going to be draining for you. If you care about technology, you should look at that, right? And you should get to know and build those opinions around the market, because your own true authentic interest is going to carry you so much further ahead than you forcing an interest in a space you don't really care about. So I would say follow your interest, go slowly, don't rush, and build that opinion, that thesis before you deploy any money. Even if you already have it, keep it, right? Keep it for now before you get that level of conviction around a market that you care about.
How would you say AI is impacting like news and what people like notice inside the news and about investing?
Totally. I mean, I think investing advice has always been very noisy, right? There's been so many people talking about it with very little worth listening to. There's a lot of noise out there. With AI entering the media world at a crazy velocity, that noise is being amplified so much so that 9 out of 10 articles today, if not a higher fraction, are noise. Like are talking about things that have no real insight, no real research, no real meaning in them, but they're talking, they're just like empty words. And that's what AI does. AI has the power to instantly generate volumes of empty words worth of articles, and that is already happening right today in the news market, and it's only going to continue to increase to a place where you, as a reader, especially as a reader with a financial intention, right, an investing intention, to be really careful about sieving the signal among the noise. And I would say in my projection next couple of years is it's going to be impossible to read news without some kind of filter for yourself that puts noise aside and lets signal in. And I think we are years, if not months, away from needing such filter for every single person. In some
Yeah.
ways, informed.now is an early version of that filter for a certain profile of a person.
I think
Um,
that that may be my favorite phrase I've heard in a while, empty words. And that's a very powerful statement, but very true. And that what we're looking for in society is to have meaning behind the words that we're reading. And you're spot on calling them empty words. But yeah, Dave, I think we got time for one more before we get into the rapid fire. Go ahead, Dave.
what was the hardest part about building informed.now?
Gosh, there've been a lot of hard parts, David, but I think telling that story, right? Because what we're doing is in every way, ignoring the current practices of traditional media. And so, I'll give you that general spirit and I'll give you a specific example. But I think telling a story and explaining it in ways that people can resonate with, because a lot of people do and a lot of people can, is just about how do we tell that story the right way, has always been very challenging and continues to be a challenge, I think, across any new idea. Specifically, an example of that is we have a very strong anti-advertisement stance where we don't think having advertisements in news media is ethical. Like we think there should be no news alongside your news readership, right? It's unethical, it's manipulative, and ultimately you're reading a news article it's talking about, vaccination rates or about COVID, and right next to it is a healthcare drug being promoted. A reader is being caught in a moment of vulnerability that I think is unethical to disturb, right? They're saying, hey, I don't know something. I am worried. I'm maybe, scared, maybe panicked for my household, for my family. I'd like to be informed. And if in that moment, instead of being informed, you're being influenced, to us, that's a huge violation of trust. And the reason why, when you look at most people across the US, they don't trust the news, right? And so for us, you know, that has led us to make a lot of decisions that we position around we were not going to do that. Those are the easy choices. That's what businesses are doing. We're going to do it right. And so an example of that is we do not advertise ourselves like in the traditional Google Ads, Meta Ads format. We do not have advertisements within our product, and we will never have advertisements within our product. There is no sponsorships, no advertisers, no investors even that would undermine our independence and our service to the reader alone. And so those have been hard decisions to carry forward because they are contrarian in every way and they make our operations and our growth harder. But it makes our purpose, our meaning and our direction feel right. And that is perhaps even more valuable.
That that's fantastic. I mean, yeah, because you got, that's the conundrum folks are in. You got to pay the bills, and that's where the advertisement comes in
Yeah.
on. But you're saying, hold on, we're a news organization. We've got to have some ethical walls that we're putting up, and I commend you for that. Go ahead, Dave.
Um, uh, if you both are ready, I'm ready for the rapid fire questions. If ready for that.
Yes, sir.
Um, what in your opinion is the best place for trusted stock market news?
Sorry, say that again.
What's your what's in your opinion the best place for trusted stock market news?
Well, the true answer is inaccessible to most people, right? And it's the Bloomberg terminal. Um, and that matters if you are in the instant trading world of someone who's trading in the middle of a day, someone who's trading very quickly. But if you're a long, short investor that's taking more concentrated, more long term bets, I think there's no place like informed.now.
One piece of advice for someone getting news for investing.
Gosh, you will probably do better making longer term bets than you will trying to time the market around intraday trading, trying to compete with a very different league of professional traders. I think go long, right? Like use the Warren Buffett approach, right? Of like long term value investing rather than trying to game and time the market in the middle of weeks, in the middle of months, because I think it's a lot more work and it hasn't really shown, at least for the average investor, to be a better strategy. So I think go long, right? Like think long term and make long term bets.
Most overhyped stock sector right now.
Wow, it's hard to say, right? Because technology has been overhyped for its whole history, but it's also the most futuristic space where, occasionally this overhyped does convert into, breaking new ground and what's possible, right? So it's hard to look at the stocks, at the tech stocks today and say that they're not overhyped, but at the same time, they're opening new frontiers of what is possible with intelligence. And it almost feels like, who are we to say that's overhyped because we have no reference point, like for artificial intelligence and what it can do. So technology is overhyped and not hyped enough at the same time.
One financial habit everyone should start tomorrow.
Your 401k, right? If you're gainfully employed, you should be investing in your 401k disproportionately at a younger age, right? So as soon as you get your first job, David, you talk to your employer about the 401k and max it out in those early years of your career. You don't have to contribute it for the rest of your life. That's not necessarily the right idea. But in those early days, right, your first 10 years of a career, you can max out your 401k each year. I think you'll be creating a very good place for yourself later on. And I think that's a smart thing to do.
That's all the rapid fire questions for me. If anyone else has any other questions, that's all.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Great
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. I guess just any last pieces of advice for our listeners that are looking to become financially literate and well informed?
Totally. I mean, I think, financial participation, right, is inevitable, right? Whether you're jumping in at David's age or later, it's inevitable, right? It's a market that you're going to be part of, whether you want it or not. It's just a question of, do you want to play a leading role in that relationship or a more passive role? And the precondition to being in a relationship with the market and being involved in the market is being informed. And so build the informed habits now, right? That they don't take you any risks before you go to market in any capacity. Because once you're in the market, you'll be glad you did. You'll be glad that you have a news reading habit and a news diet or an information diet. And if informed.now can serve you along the way, we'll be honored. And we are here as the factual infrastructure for everyday people, financial and just curious.
Thank you so much for what you're doing with informed.now. I think it's a wonderful service for society, something everybody badly is looking for. So I appreciate all you're doing on that front. And certainly thanks for joining us. We would talk to you all day, but we appreciate you taking a half hour of your time and chatting with us. Thanks so much.
David and David Jr. has been fantastic getting to know you guys and having this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.